PTSD, so post-traumatic growth. And I guess that's what I felt. I remember running off the back of the helicopter, and there's kind of RPGs flying over our head, machine gun fire, and we just looked at each other and just burst out in laughter. Energy is something we've all got, right? We're all giving off some sort of energy. So my name's Jay Morton. I am ex-Special Forces, ex-SAS, and I come from Preston originally.
People who will be watching, they probably won't understand what Preston was like. So what was it like growing up in Preston? What was your lifestyle like?
So growing up in Preston's just like growing up in any small town. I'm from just a kind of ordinary family. Went to kind of a normal school. And yeah, just grew up doing what normal, kids did in northern schools or in schools them days. So getting pissed in the park on cider and trying to score with as many women as you can and failing at the same time. And then went to school. And I don't think I got on with school, to be honest. I don't think school got on with me. I wasn't really someone that got into trouble a lot. But I think kind of looking back, I was just bored. I was just bored of the topics that were getting taught. And just, probably a lack of inspiration from the teachers that were teaching those lessons. And just being indoors as well, like being stuck in a classroom. It's like being stuck in a cage. So yeah, I didn't really like school, and at the time when you're a young kid, you don't understand why. But it's literally that, it's a lack of stimulation. And that transferred onto when I went to college after I left school. I went to study sport, and yeah, enjoyed playing sport, but 90% of the time was sat in a classroom in a cage, and that's not where I'm supposed to be. So quit after a year, or actually quit before a year. And then it was then I just got stuck in dead end jobs working in factories, and had a job making UPVC glass windows and a job as a delivery driver. And yeah, that kind of sparked my interest into going into the military.
It's interesting because the way that you're portraying it is you lived a very ordinary life for a certain period of time, and you're kind of finding yourself, and you know now there's a lack of stimulation in your life. Before you joined the military, before you joined the Paras or you joined the SAS, did you ever know that you was capable of doing kind of extraordinary things?
Do you know what? I always thought that I wasn't set out for the normal life. Do you know, we have this vision of a normal life where you get up in the morning, you kiss your wife goodbye and wave goodbye to your kids and set off on your 9-to-5 job on the train or in the car, and you work for those 8 or 9 hours during the day and then finish and then come home and, the tea's on the table and, you do whatever, go and play tennis or golf or go to the gym and then go to bed and then repeat that. I don't know, I always kind of knew deep down that that life would just not entertain me from the start. Looking back now, I've always been into fitness or pushing myself, even as a kid. I was the one that was going out running when I was at school. I remember my parents, or I remember I bought, for Christmas, I wanted the weights bench out of Argos, right? And the set of weights, and I was 13 years old, just trying to get massive, just doing everything completely wrong. So from an early age, I found comfort in pushing myself. And all your other mates are, still drinking and trying to score with girls, and yeah, I was just trying to throw weights around from an early age and just run.
It's important to kind of figure out where your kind of purpose lies, and it sounds like you had a feeling of what you should be doing, and then you kind of followed that feeling. You knew you wasn't meant to be in a cage, you knew you liked to push yourself, and then you went and joined the Paras at a young age. did you feel that you was following a feeling, and is that something that's important to do?
Yeah, like even now, I think that gut feeling or that gut instinct is generally how I navigate through life. And I think the more you do it, and the more you actually follow that gut feeling and listen to it, the more in tune you get to it. But back then, 16, 17 years old, it was, I don't know, like I've always had it in my, like I'm competitive, right? I've always wanted to, secretly or whatever, just be better than the people around me, and not in like a bad way, as in still now I like to feel like if we all just went for a run, that I'd be able to hold my own or just be at the front, because I guess I never had that growing up. Like I was quite a chunky kid and quite a shy kid, so I've always just had this thing that's followed me around. I've always had this like vision of myself following me around, that I'm just this shy, chunky kid that I was when I was younger, and I've always just tried to get away from that throughout my life, which led into kind of doing the fitness, the Argos weights bench set, and and that probably still like chases me around now. So I've always just, at the time, like I'm trying to get away from that kid, and at the same time, just trying to, I guess you're just trying to develop yourself every day, and you don't realize that when you're young, but the older you get, when you look back retrospectively, you notice that that's what you were trying to do. You were trying to get away from almost what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is just going down that normal life path.
You did say something. You said, if you're doing the same thing as everybody else, you're doing the wrong thing. What makes you say that?
Because I think human beings are just pre-programmed to just take the easy option. And the world we live in right now just gives so many options to be in, gives so many options to just live in those easy options. Like we live in a house, right? We don't have to feel the weather outside of the elements. There's no rain. Like we've all got a warm bed to sleep in. We've all got cash in the bank, whether we work or not. You walk down to the shops or get in your transport vehicle, your car. It's like everything's easy, right? Like life is set up to be easy. And so it's more about just, it's by no one's fault that everyone just ends up living the easiest life that they possibly can, and that monotonous kind of life that everyone just seems to fit into, right? Leave school, get grades, go to college, get A-levels, study, go to university, and then get that 9-to-5 job, like earn a load of cash, save up for your retirement, retire, have that mortgage and that car. And I don't know, it's like you've got to be able to pull away from that and try and understand why everyone's doing that. And everyone's doing it just because everyone else is doing it. And that's not a reason to be doing stuff. So you've got to like say, well, what do I want in life? What do I want to do? And, for me, the military gave me a lot of those answers, because it was something completely different. And I think even just going to war or going to battle or being involved in combat, you grow up in a different way and you get to see the world in a different way.
Going to war and being involved in combat, you kind of see life from a very different perspective. I can imagine you can only see life from that perspective if you go to them kind of conflicts. What did it teach you once you'd kind of been in a war zone or you've been through conflict? What did it teach you about life or your life?
Do you know, like earlier on in my career, like I was, I joined the Paras, I was 19 years old, deployed to Iraq, I was 20, deployed to Afghanistan in 2006, I was 21. And like we got involved in like heavy fighting pretty early on. And like 21 years old, like all your mates are still doing the same thing that they're doing back at home, and you grow up very quick. It's a different kind of education. And then I think kind of, like you're full of testosterone when you're 21 years old, aren't you? And, you almost, I don't know, you kind of want to be in battle, but at the same time, you don't want the bad, you don't want the negative aspects of it. Like you don't want to see your mates die, or anyone die for that reason on your side. And I think the older you get, like the more wiser you get, and the more you're able to like listen to your body and mind more, and just like understand more about, I guess, what you want and where you fit into combat. And I guess like the further on in my career was more of just like seeing what human beings are just capable of doing to each other. And again, you can look at that in like a really negative way, but I looked at it as a positive, and just because, life's short, and life's even shorter when you're shooting bullets at each other. So it's like, there's kids or whatever, or young people, or all these people dying, and it's like they're all living in this like hellhole kind of thing. And it was, for me, it was more about, it taught me more about just how I want to live my life outside of that area, and understanding that life's short, and you do what you do to make you happy, and you follow those things instead of, what we say about like following that normal life dream.
You say that humans are capable of, well, you go to places like that in extreme conditions and you find out what humans are really capable of doing to each other. Some of that stuff must stick with you. How do you kind of combat that and block that out?
Do you know what? Like, I've always seen, the things that you're exposed to, I've always seen it as a positive, to be honest. Because I don't know, it depends what kind of character you are, right? Some people are exposed to battle and death, and seeing dead bodies and teammates dying, and they go one way, right? They go down. It's that PTSD route. And I think for a lot of people, they see that stuff, and I've heard the saying a lot of times, but I don't think lads are that aware of it, is PTSG, so post-traumatic growth. And I guess that's what I felt was, I was seeing all this stuff, I was being exposed to all this stuff, but like I felt, I don't know, it gave me, like I said, I grew up, right? It gave me a different view on the world, and there are positives to take from that. Like, nothing, I don't have anything that haunts me, I don't have any snags or problems now. It's just, if you think of it, like humans have been at war for so long, like it's so natural, war, but at the same time so unnatural because we live in such a safe environment. So yeah, you just partaking in history.
I've never heard of PSG before, but when you put it in the way that you have, it can kind of, I suppose, enrich your life, because life can last for not a definitive amount of time, not an infinite amount of time, and I suppose you leave them places knowing that actually I've got a bit more clarity and direction with what I want to be doing with my life and where I don't want to be going. When you was younger, you joined the Paras at a young age. You went to Catterick. Is that where you did your training?
Yeah, basic training.
Yep. What was your mindset like at the beginning compared to the end, and what was the lessons you kind of learned through your basic training?
So yeah, like I was 19 years old turning up at basic training, and I still had that like element of that fat shy kid that was like chasing me around. So like when I turned up, I remember turning up at the train station, and you all meet in the same location, and like the screws or the corporals come and take you up to the camp. And I remember looking around at the other lads and just thinking, like there's some big lads, but everyone looks stronger and fitter than you, or like more confident, or you just have this perception of them, and they're probably, looking back now, they're doing exactly the same. They're looking at you going like, fuck, like these guys are stronger, fitter than me. I think it's just something that humans have got ingrained into them. And then you jump in the minibuses and drive and get thrown like a set of like Ronills and a maroon jumper, and that's you like get your head shaved and you're initiated into the transformation camp from civilian to soldier. And it is literally that, right? You turn up as a civilian, wide-eyed, eager, and you leave as a soldier, and it takes 6 months. And yeah, like, do you know what? I kind of shocked myself getting through that, because I was never the fittest. Like, I was never the strongest. I was never at the front. Like, and we used to do these exercises where, you know, it'd be a warm up before we went on a tab, and the PTIs would, you know, point to a tree and just say, right, everyone to that tree and back. Last 10, go again. And I'd always be in that last 10. And then it'd be, right, go again, last 5, go again. And I'd always be in that last 5. But I kind of like, I had a bit of a theory around that. And I guess because I was never the fittest, never the strongest, but I've always completed stuff and always hung on. So I've always been used to being, you know, in that fatigue state. Like, that's quite normal for me, which, as we all know, that builds resilience and that builds a stronger mind and body. Whereas the front runners, they were just used to, you know, running at their normal pace and just being okay with that. So, you know, when you deploy to places like the jungle or some of these harsher environments, like where everyone is on that level of fatigue, like, for me, it was just normal. And you'd see some of the fittest people just fall over and, you know, collapse with heat stroke, or, you know, just not be able to carry on just because of the conditions.
I've never heard it described like that before. I've never really heard that theory, but yeah, for me,
It's
when
called
I...
the J. Morton theory. It doesn't exist.
Do you know what though? I get tired a lot, and actually I'm probably tired all the time when I'm working out. I'm probably fatigued, but you're living in your outside your comfort zone more than others. So when they go outside their comfort zone, you kind of know what it's like to be there. It's more comfortable for you than it may be for somebody who's fit and hasn't gone to that dark place. So I do kind of, I get it, but I've never just considered it that way before.
Yeah. And it might just be that, you know, if you went and did something like Everest, you'd find it not as hard as someone who's done like a handful of marathons and ultra marathons and finds them pretty easy, kind of thing. Because everyone suffers when you go up in high altitude.
I don't know if you get it, but when you're like working out, especially when you're pushing yourself through training, maybe when you push yourself up Everest, you don't really have conversations with people. You talk to yourself in your head. What are the kind of things you're saying to yourself in your head to kind of drive you through these situations?
Do you know what? Like, my head goes empty when you're in that dark place. I've just always been someone who can put one foot in front of the other. And I think if you break down any mental or physical challenge, it's just a case of progression. And as long as you can keep that momentum and keep that progression going forward, you'll get to where you need to go.
Have you ever had a point in time where you've obviously applied that method, one foot in front of the other, but you felt like maybe I couldn't put that next foot in front of the other foot?
No. I like going back to, again, like I'm in my comfort zone when I'm fatigued. So, you know, that I just know that I can just keep, you break it down, right, and it's just one step, and then the next step's just one step, and just, you know, forget about where it is that you need to go and just concentrate on that next step. And like, the rest is just time, and time moves, right? Time ticks down, and then eventually you just find yourself in that position.
You spoke about going to war, being in combat zones. Can you remember the first time that you came into contact, like your very first time, and what kind of emotions you were feeling and what was happening for you at that point in time?
Yeah. So we, on that 2006 tour of Afghanistan, so the first time that I came under contact, we deployed out, so it was supposed to be a peacekeeping operation. And we didn't know it would go as noisy as what it did. But we deployed to a place called Nauzad. And we had a patrols platoon that were already stationed there, doing some recce stuff. And we literally landed in these CH-47 helicopters. And I remember running off the back of the helicopter, and, you know, that was the first time that I heard the crack and thump of a round flying over your head. And we'd just run into this massive scrap that the patrols lads were in. So There's kind of RPGs flying over our head, machine gun fire. And you know what? I think soldiers are very good at hiding fear with humour. And we just looked at each other and just burst out in laughter. And yeah, I remember just running to this wall and just getting down behind this wall, and we all just looked at each other and just went, well, this is it, isn't it? Like, this is it started. And that was a long day. Like, you know, I think we were in contact for, say, 6 to 8 hours. And personally, I think once you get over the first reaction of the first round that's been fired and the first round that you've heard, the rest of it just all sounds the same. Like, you're in that moment then. And the rest is just about thinking logically about how you combat that situation and how you get out of that situation.
And when you're going through the motions of it, are you able to kind of think logically and rationally? Does it take a long period of time to get there, or is it quicker than you think, obviously under pressure of fire?
Yeah, like those kind of contacts, you've got a lot of time to stop and think, because generally, you know, you could be shooting at each other from 100 meters away. You know, 9 times out of 10, those rounds aren't very accurate. So you can generally get behind some sort of cover and take time to plan and think about your next move. You know, as your career progresses and you end up, you know, fighting closer to people, so in buildings or in closed spaces, the time it takes to make the action or make the decision gets reduced. So that's more about your instincts and more about just training that you've done previous.
You obviously said that you was like that shy, chunky young man, and that kind of followed you around, and you was always trying to outrun that person. People who join SAS or SBS, any kind of form of special forces, especially UK, people think you would have to be superhuman, maybe not that young shy boy that was kind of following you around. So how did you manage to get from being him to then going into the SAS? And you was the only one in 9 who left from your regiment to actually make it through training for the special forces, right?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think deep down I've still got that, you know, shy, chunky boy just follows me around everywhere. I think probably a lot of people that, you know, that look successful from other people's viewpoints probably have some sort of shy, chunky young boy that follows them around. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
It works for you.
Yeah. No, but I think anyone that's, you know, got to some level of success probably has some sort of past that follows them around, whatever that is. And that shy, chunky boy doesn't seem to disappear, you know, it follows me around even now. And, you know, kind of going back to what you said, like, you know, guys in the special forces are, like, we're still human beings. You know, we're the same as everyone else. You know, there's no difference there. Like, you still feel, think, and do everything that every normal person does. It's just you've got a different, you know, you picked a different job career and you've got a different level of training.
You start the process of training, and you're only one of 9 who you came with who got through. What was the hardest part of training for you, and why did so many few people actually make it from start to finish?
Yeah, you know, selection is like a race of attrition, and you generally start with around 150 to 170. In the first 3 weeks, you're probably down to around 50, and then you go out on the next phase and, you know, you could come back with, say, 20, 25 people, which is probably a good course. And then the rest of it's just training to get you ready to join the squadron. I think for me, like, I enjoyed selection. Like, there wasn't one day when I woke up and just went that I didn't want to be here. It was more just about, you know, just proving to myself that I could get through each day. And I kind of found enjoyment in seeing people fall off. I think a lot of people do, as in, not in a bad way, right? I didn't rub anyone's face in it. But when you're doing things that are difficult and you've got an easy option to get out, like you can literally VW and, you don't hand a number in. You literally VW and you can just walk off and pack your kit and go. And you'll be in a warm shower and bath and, whatever food you want. So it's easy to quit, which makes it, the majority of people do quit. I think when that happens, like you see their weakness and it puts you up a level, right? It puts you up a level of, puts your strength up a little bit. So yeah, I enjoyed those 6 months on selection. And I think as the less able members or the less able soldiers start to drop off, you end up with a tight-knit bunch of guys that have all been through the same shit. And you form bonds through those dark times. You counteract it with a bit of humour. At the end, you're left with a good group of lads.
If someone was to come and ask you what you would need to be a special forces soldier, in terms of like not the courses you need to take or in terms of joining the army, what kind of characteristics, what attributes would you need to have? What are the main ones that you think somebody needs to have?
Read my book. No. Joking. Yeah, like resilience is probably one of the biggest things for soldiers to have, and being a soldier will teach you about resilience, and all resilience is just an ability to be able to do difficult things. But then, I think a lot of special forces soldiers, highly motivated people, intelligent people, not necessarily like IQ, so not necessarily like an educational or what would you call it?
You call it EQ and AQ, I think.
Yeah, so
emotional intelligence and adaptable intelligence.
So less an IQ, right? Which is just intelligence, right? So being able to remember a lot of detail, and more kind of a situational intelligence and an emotional intelligence. Because at the end of the day, if you're in the special forces, you're working with a group or a team, and you're all going out and taking actions under high stress environments. And then you've got to be able to read those environments well. And then obviously a base level of decent fitness that you can work on. But like every special forces soldier just wants to get better at what he's doing. And it's a high, it's a high testosterone, high alpha male environment where everyone's just trying to outdo each other secretly, and everyone wants to be better at it. Everyone wants to be better than everyone else at shooting or whatever it is. It's a good environment to be in.
When you go into that environment, do you feel like you need to prove yourself, or you need to stand strong in that environment? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, like it can be quite intimidating when you first start, because especially me, like I was 24 when I passed selection, and like the rest of the guys in my troop were all, late 30s, early 40s. They're all men, and so it's quite intimidating. And they've already got high standards, right? They've been using all the kit and equipment and doing runouts way before I've turned up. So it's, I've now, like I've done a 6-month course, right, which is selection, but that doesn't mean that I'm a special forces soldier. Like that comes after, like when you start training with the teams, when you start learning different crafts. I went away and became a medic, became a high altitude parachutist, like all these different skills and experiences that you learn that you can then bring to the team. It's, you want to prove yourself, and you want to feel accepted.
When you decided to leave the Special Forces, you then went on to do other stuff. You kind of seem like you're not the kind of person who could ever sit still. You're always kind of looking for something to get into, which is going to test you and push yourself. In terms of climbing Everest, was that harder than selection, or is Everest harder than Special Forces selection?
There's probably a load of SF blokes that are going to kill me for this, but like selection's hard, right? It's probably one of the hardest things that I've done. Everest is different, two different experiences. Um, Everest is harder. They're quite difficult to be able to put them both in the same category. You know, selections over a 6 month period, and you're not under that severe stress for that whole 6 months, right? It's like off and on. Whereas the most difficult thing about climbing Everest is the altitude, because we're just sat here normal now, like chatting away, like the clothes we're wearing are suitable for the temperature outside, and I've got a fridge full of food, and you make a cup of tea whenever you want it. Like, everything's difficult the higher up you go, and you're doing that constantly for 6 weeks, living at altitude, sleeping in tents, eating the same food over and over again, lunch and meat, potatoes, rice, that kind of stuff. Shitting in a barrel in the ground, not really showering, you get a bucket of hot water, and then, that's just at base camp. Then the higher up you go, the more difficult that gets, and the harder it is to generate energy to be able to move. So yeah, the two are very different, but like I said, I enjoyed both, but I enjoyed selection just because of the group and the camaraderie ship, whereas Everest is a different beast, and that final summit pushes, it takes its toll on you.
A lot of people would look at you and they'll be thinking, you do stuff that scares me. You do stuff that would kind of incite fear within me, whether it be climbing K2 or Everest twice, or going into war zones, or being a special forces soldier. Is that something that you've ever felt fear? And if so, how do you kind of work with that?
I think like when we use words like fear, it gives it a negative, gives it like a negative, what's the word?
Condensation.
Nah, like a feel, condensation of the windows.
Connotation.
Yeah, like when we use the word fear, it gives it a negative feel. And it, like, if you break it down, like, fear is just a reaction in your body. Yeah, like, I've felt fear before in the past, and like, fear generally only happens for like a short period of time, because there's usually a logical explanation that you can put to why you're feeling that fear, whether it's a round that's just cracked over your head, or something that's just exploded, or maybe there's some rock fall on a mountain. Like, that's a moment to be scared, right? But there's a logical explanation for it, and there's usually an action that you can take which is going to get you out of that fear feeling and get you to some sort of safety. So you've got to break it down that way. I think kind of the things that scare me more than those dangerous kind of things are just, like, living a stagnant life or living a boring life. Like, boredom and mediocrity scare me way more than climbing Everest or being shot at. And I think, like, I'd hate to just get to the age of like 80 or 90 years old or 100 and just turn back and just think that I've wasted time.
You could say, like, what's the thing that you fear the most? People might say it might be heights or whatever. Yours sounds like it's sitting on the sofa and watching the TV and waiting for life to pass by. But I do believe there's a lot of people who do work a 9 to 5 and they want to break it, they don't know how to break it. And fear is probably an element of that, in terms of the stepping outside of the comfort zone and not having that level of security. Sounds like you haven't struggled to kind of step out of your comfort zone. But for people living a 9 to 5, what do they need to do to get out of it?
Do you know, like, just start small, and you've got to, like, be honest with yourself, right? It's your choice, like, it's your life, like, no one else is going to change it. So you've got to make that decision. And then it's, if you're not happy with your life and you want to change it, then do it, right? And I don't know what that is, what anyone else is feeling, but if you start small, and whether it's you you want to get in shape, like start walking, start trying to create habits that are healthy for your body and for your mind. You know, start walking, join a gym, join classes, put yourself in these situations. And this is where you grow, right? Because you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And my uncomfortable situation is completely different to someone else's uncomfortable situation. And, you know, you could say that a million times over. And career's like a big one, right? Like that's the comfiest thing that people have, is a career and money coming in. Because that's, you know, without money, like the chances of being homeless and not being able to pay for food for your kids and your family, like that's the biggest fear, right? And I can't tell anyone to change that. You know, you've just got to ask yourself whether that's something that you want to change.
You spoke about something there, which I know you spoke about before, but with struggle comes growth. And I know that you do a lot of working out and you're into your fitness. And I think something that a lot of people can do is they can start to struggle in the gym, on the road, running, in the swimming pool. But how important is it to get yourself into that struggle to then expand from it?
Yeah, like I think, you know, going back to what we were saying before, it's like the world's an easy place to live in. I don't think the human body's set up to not feel struggle. You know, we've struggled all our life, right? And if you think the reason why we're all sat in these buildings and eating good food is because we struggled in the past, and that struggle has generated systems and put things in place, and now we've built supermarkets and cars, but that all came from struggle. So good things come from struggle, but it's hard to find it these days. So like, you know, it goes back to what I was saying before. It's like struggle could just be going for a run, or struggle could be reading a book, or, you know, just doing something difficult. Like when I was that shy kid, like struggle for me was just having a conversation with someone. But like the more I do it, the better I become. And it's about, you know, if you can look back when in 10 years and just go like, fuck, I never used to be able to have a conversation with someone. Now I can walk into a room and speak to everyone openly and confidently. Like that's what you get from struggle, right?
It does grow a lot. I noticed you said that with hard times build hard men, that build soft times, that build soft people. And I suppose that related to me in terms of children, if you have them, or people that you help out. Maybe you might have been through a hard time, but then you make it more comfortable for people. You said stuff like building supermarkets, doctors, pharmacies and stuff, so people can have it easier. And then they get away from the hard times and the struggle and the growth. And I think doing exercise or pushing yourself in a way where the world is set up for us to live easily and have a nice life where everything's kind of accommodated for us. There's still different ways we can push ourselves and struggle, but then it comes from kind of us taking ourselves to the struggle rather than just being born into the struggle as much.
Yeah, like I'm not saying by any means, you know, burn down the supermarkets and let's go back to shooting deers and picking apples from trees, right? But like that's the world that we live in now. I think fitness and exercise is the easiest and best way to just find some sort of struggle, and it's manageable, right? It's manageable, it's easy. You join a gym, you go out for a run, and you've got something to work for. If you start running, you can work up to a 5k, a 10k, a marathon. It's measurable. You've got goals that you can tick off. If you're going into a gym, you can start lifting heavy, and you've got a measurement, right, that you can go off, that you can see yourself getting better at something. Sport's the same. Like I surf, like I can feel myself every time I go surfing getting better and better and better, and that's a good feeling. And then you'll notice in other areas of your life that, you know, changes will happen, and whether it's, you know, confidence, or whether it's in the workplace, or whether it's in a relationship, or whether it's just your general happiness. Like the more of these things that you do when you're developing yourself and getting better and better, everything changes.
You said people often sell themselves short rather than upsell themselves. And I think you spoke about you acquiring a set of skills that were put together in a military way, which then allows you to then go and do other things in life. And from what you've done, you was somebody who joined the military, but then after that you did probably things which required different skill sets, like write a book, start up a business, running a business, things that you probably didn't think that they were your kind of bag or your kind of thing to do. How important is it to kind of big yourself up rather than sell yourself short?
I think it's just more, for me, it was more about just understanding what skills I had. And um, like, yeah, I mean, you've got to look at what skills you've developed, right? And again, it's that we live in a normal world where people associate their skills to the job role they've got or the qualifications that they got in university or college. Whereas like, like, I mean, like I've gone and set tasks up in certain countries. That's the same as setting a business up, right? It's just different in a way. You've just got to look for different things. You've got to look for connections. You've got to network. You've got to buy assets or, buy things in and get people to do stuff for you. And that's the same in business. The two are the same. So it's more about just understanding what you can do as a person, because it's way more than what you think it is. And you just get led to believe that all you can do is that 9 to 5 or that job that you've got. Whereas actually, like, we live in such a world where you can just log onto a computer and learn anything that you want to learn and reskill yourself in anything. It's so easy. So yeah.
That's probably one of the things that's took me kind of from where I was to where I am now, is being able to identify transferable skills. And if I think there's a chance that I may be able to do something because it's similar but in a different way relates to something else, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time you find that, like what you're saying, you're capable of a lot more than you think you are. But some people, they get narrow-sighted and can't see how some skill sets they've got could transfer into different areas. Writing a book for you, start to finish, was it an easy task or was it a hard task?
I just kind of going back to what you were saying though, like, I think as well, like everything that you see as being hard, I think, when you start making progress, it starts opening doors, right? And then those doors open other doors, and then those other doors open other doors. And before long, in no time, you've kind of gone through different journeys and paths and ended up in places that you never thought you would do. But yeah, writing the book it's difficult, right? But it takes time, and it takes a lot of, digging up all the memories, good, bad, and just kind of going through your life and making sure you've got everything down.
Completely kind of getting your story out there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not an autobiography. Like, I didn't want to do an autobiography. Like, I feel like I've got way more in me and way more experiences and things to talk about in an autobiography later on down the line. Like that's not where I'm at right now. And this book is more about, this is a combination of the last 14 years of my military experience. I was lucky to have a very, very kinetic and fast-moving career in the military, and joined at a time when the British Army was under a lot of heavy fighting, and you learn a lot of stuff during those times. And it was more about me just going back through that time and just making a note of the systems and techniques and what's helped me get through difficult times, and how I've managed to seek out opportunity and end up on some of the highest mountains in the world, or building resilience, and all these kind of tricks and lessons that I've learned over the last 14 years. I just wanted to put them into some sort of, dialogue with experiences that I've had and stories that I've experienced, and put that into the book.
Sounds really interesting, and I don't want you to tell me too much about what the context of the book is, because people need to read the book to really get the full experience of it. But it sounds like you've had a career, and in that career you've learned many lessons through stories or experiences, and then you're kind of putting them onto paper through your own perspective of things that you've learned. But in terms of your career, or even maybe your life, what do you think the hardest lesson you learnt was?
Hardest lesson I've learned. Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself before you listen to anyone else. And I'm not going to go into the story because it's not for this, but yeah, I learned the hard way in a certain experience where I listened to someone else and something went wrong, when I knew what I should have been doing and I should have listened to myself. And you know yourself, the outcome, or what you want the outcome to be. So yeah, just listening to yourself a little bit more.
I've been thinking recently, quite recent as well actually, you said that. I think people truly know what's right and wrong. Maybe for them. I think deep down, if any situation pops up, you know the choice that you should probably make. And I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but say something does go right and it does go wrong, but you choose to take someone else's advice and it does go wrong. Do you feel like even if it did go wrong and it was your choice, you would sit with it better?
You own it, right? Like, I have to own the fact that I listened to someone else, which is even worse, which plagues you, right? But then you learn those lessons the hard way. And like what you were saying, like you know yourself where you want to go, right? It's like when you ask someone their opinion of something, you already have the answer in your own head. You're just trying to find clarification, or you just want them to agree with you so that you can go ahead and do it.
That's something that I've been thinking about a lot just recently. With Special Forces soldiers, people think they're probably superhuman, and the more that I've looked into it, you'd probably think with the job that you do and what you see and what happens that there's a switch in the back of your head and you can just turn off your emotions. And speaking to you today, that's not something which seems apparent. It just seems that maybe you're in control of your emotions and you're able to rationale and think logically about what's going off. But throughout your career, have you ever had a time where emotionally you've not really been able to keep yourself intact, or it's been a really tough emotional time? And if so, how'd you get through it?
Is emotionally right?
Yeah, so emotional time where you wasn't emotionally able to
Yeah,
check
like
yourself.
kind of going back to what you're saying. Yeah, I think you've got to be really self-aware and self-observant of your emotions. At the same time, you know, when you go overseas and when you're carrying out operations, you do tend to, you know, like have a switch that, you know, when you start doing whatever it is you need to do, you almost like you're able to compartmentalize those emotions and switch them off whilst you're doing what you need to do. But you need to be self-observant and self-aware of that, because I think that's probably where people could run into problems down the line. You need to deal with that emotion at some stage. And yeah, like I've always been pretty good with that kind of stuff. There was kind of one experience that I had when where yeah, like it was quite a, you know, the last 3 months of a tour was quite a kinetic, fast moving, you know, we were going out on jobs most nights, and I come back from, so we literally did, yeah, it was a busy time in that tour, and you know, we were going out on multiple jobs most nights, and to the point that when we did our handover consisted of just going out on the ground. And yeah, you know, we managed to do some good work and took down a network in a certain area. But I remember returning from that, and like I got fast tracked. Usually you go and do some sort of decompression, and I came back within, you know, I remember coming off a job that, you know, we did three jobs on the bounce, and then I remember coming back and jumped on a plane and flew back to the UK, and I was back in 24 hours on the train up to Preston to meet my then girlfriend. And I knew inside that like something wasn't right, and you know, you call it PTSD or whatever, but it was just like a feeling that I had inside that you'd just gone through this, you know, you'd just gone through a massive change in environment and emotion and what's been going on, and you've literally just, you know, 20 hours later, 24 hours later, you're in a completely different environment. It's a benign environment. There's no danger, and yeah, it was a weird feeling. And I just kind of had in my head, that everything will be all right, and like probably took about 3 weeks for me to get back to normal. I didn't speak about it back then. I didn't tell anyone. But like I was arguing with my girlfriend at the time, like every night. I found drink had help, which, isn't the right answer, but it just numbed what I was feeling. And like I just had it in my head that I think the more time went on, the better I felt. Which just confirmed that, eventually this will pass and I'll be fine, which it did. And it's just a reaction that you have from going from one extreme to another, right? You go from fighting to, being back in the arms of a loved one, and she's telling you she loves you, and you've completely switched off all your emotions inside. It's a difficult place to be. Yeah.
I suppose you're still on edge at that point. It's not something where you can just completely...
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on, right? And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on, but, that's a feeling that you've got inside, and you just got to roll with it, right? Like at the time, looking back now, I don't think talking about that kind of stuff was in. I don't think people did it. If people had PTSD, it was generally the whole process of going through that was done away from the rest of the teams, just because like men have never been good at sharing that kind of stuff, right? And even when I was in, it was quite taboo. Like no one really spoke about it. You'd never confide in your mates about what you'd seen and done, and like maybe you'd had a sleepless night or whatever. Now or later on in my career, it completely changed, and I know there's a lot now about men's mental health, and which is a great thing. But at that time, it was just like me on my own kind of thing. But again, I got through it, and that made me a stronger person.
With the struggle comes growth.
Exactly.
I've just got some words that I just want to read out to you, and it's just what pops into your mind when you hear the words. It's not a short thing, so it's not like a one-word answer. I just summarise it in as many words as you want, really. But the first one would be purpose.
Yeah, like it's important to find purpose in everything that you do, right? And that's, it's as important as it is in your career or in your fitness regime or your motivation. Because I guess like purpose brings momentum, and me personally, like if I'm not moving forward and I'm stale, then that's my worst nightmare.
Making sacrifices.
Yeah, like I think if you want to go anywhere in life, you've got to make some sort of sacrifice. If you think that you've got that safe, comfortable job right now, there's going to be certain things that you're going to have to sacrifice, whether it's friendships, whether it's with loved ones, whether it's with family. But if you want to live life by your terms, you've got to make these sacrifices.
Freedom.
Freedom's important to me. Freedom is probably one of the reasons why I chose to live like the life that I live now. And it's freedom of everything, right? Freedom of having no one tell me what to do when I wake up in the morning, and freedom to pick and choose what I want to do each day, and freedom to choose how I earn my money, and freedom to choose where I travel and where I want to work from. Like with freedom comes a lot of sacrifices too, right?
Energy.
I see energy is something we've all got, right? We're all giving off some sort of energy, and you're around some people that, I call it drains and radiators. Like people are either a drain or they're a radiator. And if you're a drain, you always know that drain. When you're around that person, you generally come away feeling drained, right? That's what they do. They're negative people. They're the kind of people that make excuses for what they're doing, whether they're wearing the wrong boots or, they've not had breakfast that morning. They're drains, right? And I think the more you're around those people, the more you feel it. And then you've got radiators, and radiators radiate energy, right? You know a radiator, you know when you're around someone because they're positive people. They've always got your back. They've always got new ideas. They're always doing stuff. They're always wanting to move forward. And I think the more you can be around radiators and the less you can be around drains, like the better your energy's going to be, right?
I've never heard it explained like that before, but it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I really like that. A positive mindset.
Yeah, like positive mindset's important. Just seeing things in a positive way. It goes back to drains and radiators. Like you should be more of a radiator, right? Like you've only got to turn the media and news on now to be swarmed with negative media and negative news, whether it's about COVID, whether it's about the US elections. And it's about, surrounding yourself with good people, having goals and ambitions, and seeing every fuck up and failure as just a positive. Everything's there to learn. Everything's put in front of you to learn stuff. Everything's put in front of you to learn from. And it's how you view the world, right? If you view the world in a positive mindset, then you're always going to be moving forward. You're always going to be creating and meeting good people.
Excuses.
Yeah, like excuses are the devil. Like everyone knows someone that makes excuses for stuff of why they can't do something, right? Yeah, like I've always just been someone who, even if you've got an excuse, you just don't say it. Because no one likes someone who uses excuses. It's just weakness.
I think that's right as well. I think we was going to be a bit late today. We was a little bit late, and I just thought to myself, there's no point telling you why we're going to be late. We've got to be about 7 minutes late. It don't fucking matter. Just get there on time. And if you're not going to get there on time, just take it. Don't make an excuse for it. Because it doesn't fucking change the outcome, really, does it?
Yeah. No. And it creates like a dual mindset, right? Because like you end up, if you work with those kind of people and you're like, oh, I'm late, but we stopped at the services and Johnny had a shit and like, yeah, we're late. And then the kind of people that receive that and then like, well, I don't know, I just feel like, if you just own your fuck ups, right? Like we weren't late because, we're just not late. Like, yeah, no dramas. Like everyone's late, right?
Yeah. Failure.
I think failure is something that you should be seeking. Because to do anything that puts you out of your comfort zone, you're going to fuck up every now and then. And that is, that's failure, right? You shouldn't aim to fail, but, failure should be a byproduct of what you're doing. Because, like, I look back at some of the stuff I've done that I've what you would see as my biggest failures in life, and that's where you learn the most. Like, you learn the big lessons, right, from failing. Just like listening to myself instead of listening to other people.
Soldier.
As booked by J. Morton. Yeah, soldiers. Yeah, soldiers are just, people that put themselves in a career choice. They're hard people, they've got a hard job. Good sense of humour. Yeah, I spent 14 years as one.
You should know pretty well.
Yeah.
I've got one more. One foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I think, we're all searching for some sort of momentum and progress in life, and you get that from just sticking one foot in front of the other. Whether it's fitness, whether it's career, just keep moving forward. Success is hard to define, right? I think success is someone else's opinion of you, because I think people that are trying to find success will never get to success because they're constantly searching for it. I think other people's opinion of someone might go, that person's successful.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and same here. Just one more, just because you mentioned it. Quite interested in the PTSD. Is there something specifically that, like a specific moment you remember yourself, and what was, if you do, what was the growth, or one that sticks out, and what was the growth that you gained from it?
Yeah. So yeah, PTSD. Like where, you know, I think it was that 2006 tour, right? 21 years old, and you know, we had 6 months of just constant fighting. Like literally, you know, we were based at a place called Sangin, which was probably one of the most kinetic, most dangerous places in Afghanistan. And yeah, we were just going out and scrapping every day. And like I seen some guys get affected by quite a few things. And I came back and I had a bit of shell shock, like, you know, where you hear bangs and makes you jump. And that probably lasted for like the remainder of my career. But it was a weird one. I remember just coming back and thinking about, like, I remember seeing like guys' eyes change, right? Like after certain incidents. And then they just went downhill and came back from that tour and just started drinking. And I like questioned myself and just asked like why I didn't go down that path. And instead I kind of came back with just a view on the world that was completely different. And I don't know, like you grow up a lot, and I felt like I'd mentally aged 10 years. It's hard to define, right, that PTSD, and it probably happens differently for everyone else, but it was more just about the perspective that I had when I came back from that tour. And just, you know, I felt like a better person because of what had happened.
It's crazy how you say people's eyes go, and you can recognise and you can see that that person's probably changed forever now, or for a definite period of time. And then for you, the other way, it goes the other way. I suppose it goes back to that positive mindset, and there's always a negative, there's always a positive.
Yeah, it's a hard one to pin down, right? Because I think, without going too psychological, because I'm not an expert, but I think a lot of reasons for people going one way or the other way is down to genetics, is down to, you know, childhood and the way they were brought up and what they've been exposed to prior to that incident happening. And then that incident happens, right? And you can either go one way or the other way. And I remember, like, literally seeing this bloke kill, who was involved in this scrap, and I think they killed 3 people. And I remember chatting to him afterwards, and I was like his eyes just looked different, and his character and demeanour. And you know, I'm never going to name names or anything like that, but I bumped into him a while back, and he's just still the same. It's quite sad.
From that one moment, I think I believe similar to you. I think that the kind of experiences and genetics that you go through as in your early years kind of build coping mechanisms, which then, when you get into certain situations, if you've not developed kind of healthy ones or been exposed to too much when you're younger, you can revert back to poor coping mechanisms, and it can push you over the edge.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we only know what we feel like, right? We don't know what anyone else feels like. And everyone else has got their own struggles and insecurities and problems, and we all have them. Even like the most confident of people on the outside, you know, there's some suffering going on the inside. And you just put that face on, right? And you think that person's invincible, but yeah, like I said, like everyone's got something going on inside.
Whether it's that shy, chunky kid, or whether it's something completely different, you don't know whose internal dialogue is in their mind. But in a way, it benefits you.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you know what? Just being like self-aware and just being aware of that guy going that way, right? And like, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to constantly have resentment for stuff that I've done or for the military. Like, I wanted to go the other way, right? Like, the military don't owe me shit. Like, they don't owe me anything. They gave me an amazing life. Like, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for every experience that I've had, because I've learned from it in one way or another, and that sent me in a different direction.